I am Merryjest Starchild, and I welcome you to tonight's concert at the Varro Theatre. Tonight is a bit of one of my favorite things. We're going to sing, well, I'm going to sing, you're going to listen, but we're going to talk about French opera. So, we have gone through our education phase through Italian opera. You got to see the Barber of Seville with me. So I'm thinking that our next opera that we're going to watch may be a French opera, just so you can get the contrast, right? But let's talk brass tacks about French opera, because there's a lot to get through tonight, and I'm not going to dilly-dally or dally-dilly. French opera has a very long and distinguished history that began to take shape in the 17th century. The development of the genre in France can be largely attributed to the work of one person, Jean-Baptiste Lully, who was the concertmeister and dance master over at the Palace of Versailles for King Louis XIV, the Sun King. Now, we know him as Jean-Baptiste Lully, but his real name was Giovanni Battista Lully. Yes, he was Italian. He was a naturalized French citizen, and he changed his name to the French version of his name to fit in better. My voice is kind of low. How about there? Oh, give me 1 second. There. Is it any better? Let me test. I can hear myself fine. Hi, okay. Oh, the vagaries of Second Life. Where was I? So, yes. Lully's operas combine elements of ballet, drama, music, and his works were performed at the court of Versailles, the court of his patron. This is like this is like Goldilocks, but for singing. You're too loud, you're too soft, you're just right. So, his influence shaped French opera for decades, especially the integration of dance, which of course was a French invention. Ballet is a French invention. Also at the hands of Jean-Baptiste Lully, and King Louis XIV was very interested in ballet, and he even danced in several ballets by Lully. There's a great movie called Le Roi Danse, The King Dances, which talks about this period. So his influence sort of took a backseat a little bit in the 18th century with composers like Jean-Philippe Rameau, which were more influenced by Italian opera. Such as his operas like Hippolyte et Aricie, which further increase the sophistication of French opera by introducing more complex harmonic structures and a greater emphasis on orchestral color. Well, yes. In the 19th century, French opera underwent a significant expansion, a glow-up, if you might say. This was marked by the rise of the opéra comique and grand opera. The opéra comique featured spoken dialogue instead of the recitative. It blended popular music with opera and making it more accessible to the general public. Composers like Georges Bizet, whose Carmen is a cornerstone of the operatic canon, embraced this style and brought it to new heights. Meanwhile, the grand opera genre, characterized by large-scale productions like Giacomo Meyerbeer's Les Huguenots, also had elaborate staging, focus on dramatic narrative. These forms of French opera offered a striking contrast to the Italian bel canto style and the German Wagnerian approach, each of which was more focused on vocal virtuosity and the use of complex orchestral textures. So, what sets French opera apart from its Italian and German counterparts? It is its approach to language, structure, dramatic focus. While Italian opera is renowned for its emphasis on vocal virtuosity and lyrical beauty, particularly in the bel canto style, and we are very familiar with that because we watched The Barber of Seville, which is one of the cornerstones of bel canto comedy, opera buffa, as we call it. French opera often places more importance on the integration of spoken dialogue and the fluid relationship between music and drama. The opera comique, with its inclusion of spoken lines and popular music, contrasts with the continuous music forms of Italian and German operas, which were uninterrupted. It uses a lot of the orchestra in supporting emotional atmosphere, as opposed to the German opera, which, for example, the works of the amazingly gigantic asshole Richard Wagner, which focuses on the use of leitmotifs and integral orchestral development that supports the narrative. Unlike French opera had a tendency to focus on a lot of ballet choreography as well as psychological themes at a certain level of relationships, whereas a lot of German opera frequently delved into deep mythological or deep psychological themes. So today's first composer is going to be François Bazin, who was a French composer and a teacher who contributed charming and skillful works to the operetta repertoire in the 19th century. He was born in Marseille, and he showed early promise and went on to study at the Paris Conservatoire under the guidance of Fromental Alevi, one of the leading figures of that era. In 1840, Bazin won the Prix de Rome, a very prestigious award that allowed him to further his craft. He never became as universally recognized as some of his contemporaries like Jacques Offenbach, but his compositions were appreciated in their time for their melodic freshness. I think not, that's right. Among Bazin's his best well-known stage work is the operetta Maître Patelin, which premiered in Paris in 1856. Based on the medieval French farce La Farce de Maître Patelin, the operetta draws on the timeless themes of cleverness, trickery, and social satire. And the aria that I'm going to sing today by it is one of the standout moments in Maître Patelin, the song Je pense à vous, I think of you. It's a very, very tender aria that brings a lot of lyrical depth and affection, wistful longing for a loved one, revealing an emotional sincerity beneath the surface of the operetta's bustling comedy. The setting of the text is simple but very, very touching. So without further ado, Je pense à vous quand je me veille, and go ahead and check out the translations. You can click on the board next to me and you'll be able to get the translations. I realized I missed one translation, but we'll get to that. In any case, Je pense à vous.
Je pense à vous quand je m'éveille, et de loin je vous suis des cieux. Je vous revois quand je sommeille, dans un songe mystérieux. Le seul bonheur auquel mon cœur aspire, c'est d'obtenir un aveu de plus doux. Voilà, voilà ce que je vais vous dire, mais hélas, j'ai trop peur de vous. songe que votre passage, lorsque j'espère enfin vous voir, je me dis par un doux langage, aujourd'hui je l'aime moi, je veux dans mon bilan de ligue dire je t'aime en tombant à genoux. Voilà, voilà ce que j'avais vous dire. Mais hélas, j'ai trop peur de vous. Mais hélas, j'ai trop peur de
Thank you. Spasiba. Thank you very much, Vladimir. Hi, Blake. So, I want to say, God, Malachi, check me in on this. If I recall correctly, and I might be wrong, but if I recall correctly, Jean-Baptiste Lully died of gangrene. Yes, he died of gangrene. He died. So back in the day, you did not have conductors. A conductor was not its own career, so to speak. That became a career in and of itself once things became a lot more sophisticated, orchestral-wise, you might say. But up until then, usually the composer would keep time by banging a cane on the floor. And it just so happened that Jean-Baptiste Lully ended up marking time so hard that he ended up putting the cane through his foot. And the wound got infected, and thus died Jean-Baptiste Lully. He died of music. So, now we've had Bazin, so let's talk about one of his better known contemporaries. Yes, metronome version 0.1. There were a couple of bugs in the feature, as you might say. So we're going to talk about Jacques Offenbach, whom I absolutely love. And you've heard me sing some of his stuff before. So, Jacques Offenbach is a German-born French composer, cellist, and one of the most influential figures in the development of modern musical theater. Yes, he was. He was born Jacob Offenbach in the city of Cologne, and he moved to Paris as a teenager to study at the Conservatoire de Paris, soon finding his place in the vibrant culture life of the city. Offenbach became renowned for his sharp wit, his rhythmic vitality, and his gift for melody, and he quickly rose to fame as a composer of operettas, like comedic operas that often satirize the politics and society of the day. His sparkling, irrelevant style captured the spirit of the Second Empire, delighting audiences with its combination of humor, satire, and technical brilliance. Over his career, he wrote nearly 100 stage works, culminating with his grand opera, The Tales of Hoffmann, based on the stories of E.A. Hoffmann, which was completed shortly before his death. The work I'm going to highlight today is La Belle Hélène, The Beautiful Helen, which was performed in 1864 at the Théâtre des Variétés in Paris, and it's one of his most famous operettas. Yeah, he was the Randy Rainbow of his era, definitely. The libretto offers a very satirical retelling of the classical Greek myth of Helen of Troy, focusing on events that led to the Trojan War, rather than presenting the story with irreverence. He and his librettist use it as a vehicle to mock the moral laxity, vanity, and political corruption of contemporary French society. The operetta is full of wit, and it has lively ensembles, comic arias, mischievous humor, and a classical parody with the spirit of the Parisian stage. One of the highlights of La Belle Hélène is the aria Au Mont Ida, on Mount Ida, which is sung by the character of Prince Paris early in the opera. Paris, not Paris. In this aria, Paris, the handsome shepherd, although sometimes he's a prince, I don't know. He could be a shepherd prince. You know, there's shepherd moons like Aeneas is. So not gonna happen. That is a little bit too high for me, Crixus. I have a high D, but I do not have a high E flat yet. But he's talking about how he was about his peaceful, careful life, tending sheep at the slopes of Mount Ida, and there he happens to meet three goddesses who were arguing about who was the most beautiful of them all. You have, of course, Hera, known as Mrs. Zeus, poor thing, goddess of marital fidelity because irony was not dead in ancient Greece. And then you had Athena, the goddess of wisdom and warfare, strategic warfare. And yeah, he should have run. And then, of course, we have Aphrodite, the goddess of love. Goddess of love. And each one tries to offer a reason for why they should be the most beautiful ones. Aphrodite wins, of course, because it's freaking Aphrodite, which tells you that Athena is probably not as wise as she likes to think, because she should have known better than to get into a beauty pageant with Aphrodite. But in any case, here comes Au Mont Ida by Offenbach from La Belle Hélène.
Au Mont Ida, toi de ses querelles dans sa voix, elle dit sans ses pensées la plus belle de nous trois. Et bon, que c'est dit, c'est beau quand je le garçon. Et bon, que c'est dit, c'est on de drôle de façon. On de drôle de façon. Dans ce bois passant, jeune homme, effreux, c'est beau, c'est moi. Ça m'entraîne d'une pomme, et vous voyez bien les tableaux. Oh, là est le beau jeune homme, arrêtez-vous. Veuillez donner la pomme à la plus belle de nous. Et bon, que c'est dit, c'est pour un jeune le garçon. Et bon, que c'est dit, c'est on des drôles de façon. On des drôles de façon. L'une dit, je me réserve ma beauté, ma chasteté. Donne le prix à Minerve la mérité. Et voyez que c'est lié, c'est un des drôles de façon. L'autre dit, je ma naissance, mon orgueil et mon pain. Je dû l'emporter, je pense, dans de la pomme à genoux. Et voyez que c'est dit, caresse en des drôles de façon bourgeois le garçon. La troisième ne dit rien. Elle le prit tout de même, Calcas, vous m'entendez bien, et moi, que se dirait, c'est pour un joli le garçon, et moi, que se dirait, c'est en des drôles de façon.
So now we're going to go to Georges Bizet, who is a French composer whose name is today inseparably linked with Carmen, one of the most famous and frequently performed operas in the world. Unfortunately, Carmen was a resounding failure when it opened. Isn't it amazing? Some of the things that fail at the very beginning and then they become breakaway successes. Unfortunately for Pour Bizet, Carmen, he never lived to see Carmen's success. In an eerie, tragically, he died just 3 months after the premiere, unaware that Carmen would go on to become a cornerstone of the operatic repertoire. Now, in an interesting coincidence, it is said that during a later performance of Carmen, the mezzo-soprano who was playing Carmen looked up during the card scene where they're reading the tarot cards as she plays the death card. And she says that she saw Bizet's face in the audience, causing her to faint. Among Carmen's many musical highlights, and it's one of those operas that is just chock full of gorgeous melodies that you will remember forever, from
L'amour est un oiseau rebelle, tout de toréador en garde.
We have the one aria that Don José sings, La fleur que tu m'avais jetée, also known as the flower song. He and Carmen have just had a disagreement, and Carmen claims that he does not love her, and he brings out a flower that is now withered and dry, and he says how she had provocatively thrown a flower at him, and he kept it during his imprisonment. He went to jail because he freed her, and he talks about how throughout the night the scent of that flower kept him going. Now, you think, oh, this is awfully sweet. Don José is a stalker and a psycho, which is why the first thing that you hear in his aria before he sings is the fate leitmotif. That is the melody that repeats throughout the entire opera that lets you know that things are afoot.
De cette odeur je te voyais. Je me prenais au témoigner, à détester, à me dire, pourquoi faut-il que le destin lèvisse là sur mon chemin? Puis-je m'accusais des blasphèmes et je descendrai à moi-même, je descendrai qu'en seul désir, en seul désir, en seul espoir de revoir au Carmen, oui, de revoir quand tu n'avais su qu'apparaître, quand je t'ai un regard sur moi, t'emporter de tout mon être. Oh, ma Carmen, j'étais une chose à toi. Carmen, je
Squeak, squeak goes my chair. So now let's move on to Charles Gounod, who was a French composer best remembered today for his operas and sacred musics. He had a gift for amazing, soaring melodies. He was trained at the Paris Conservatoire, where he studied under Halévy, remember that name, and Les Sœurs. He also won the Prix de Rome. So, one of Gounod's most celebrated operas is Romeo et Juliette, Romeo and Juliet, which premiered at the Théâtre Lyrique in Paris in 1867. Of course, it's based on Shakespeare's timeless tragedy about a love between two teenagers that left a body count. It stays very, very close to the spirit of the original play, while adapting it into a French lyrical opera with difficult arias, passionate duets, and very vibrant examples. One of the opera's most famous moments is the tenor aria. Ah, lève-toi soleil! Oh, wake up, sun! The timeless tragedy of hormones and bad decisions. So, being a teenager, the documentary, am I right? This aria is sung by Romeo in the famous balcony scene. He stands below Juliet's window, wrapped in awe of her beauty and comparing her to the rising sun. And the music perfectly captures the breathless beauty and wonder of young love, opening with a very, very tender recitative, where Romeo speaks very, very, very frailty, and then it becomes luxurious and ardent as Romeo begs the sun to rise.
L'amour, oui, son ardeur a troublé tout mon être. Mais quelle soudaine clarté resplendit à cette fenêtre. C'est là que dans la nuit, rayonnant Lève-toi, soleil, fais pâlir les étoiles qui dans l'azur s'envolent, brillent au firmament. Oh, lève-toi, oh, lève-toi, pareil à strebire charmant. Quelle belle, ah, je n'ai rien entendu, mais ses yeux parlent pour elle, et mon cœur a répondu. Oh, lève-toi, soleil, et balaye les étoiles qui dans la cire s'envolent, brillent au firmament. Oh, lève-toi, pareil, pareil à strebire charmant. Bien pareil à strebire charmant. Bien pareil, bien pareil.
Now we're going to move on to Léo Delibes. Now, if that name sounds familiar, it's because you may have heard before some of his music, the opera Lakmé, for example. And if you've never heard it, you've heard the duet, I'm pretty sure. Two women singing the flower duet. That was composed by Léo Delibes for his opera Lakmé. It's a jewel of the French Romantic tradition. It's set in British occupied India, and the opera tells the story, the tragic story of Lakmé. Thank you, Orbilastra. Of where was I? Yes, Lakmé, the daughter of a Brahmin priest who falls in love with a British officer. A romance that is doomed by cultural conflict and duty. Delibes' score evokes the exotic setting through shimmering orchestration, modal melodies, and very delicate and sensuous textures without sacrificing the elegance at the heart of his style. It includes various showpieces like the Bell Song and the Flower Song, but one of the opera's lesser known but very enchanting pieces is Fantaisie au divin mensonge, Fantasy of Divine Lies, sung by his love, by Lakmé's lover, who is, he's kind of given himself over to fancy. Let us go ahead and listen. I will sing and you will listen, right?
Rendre les âmes à bijoux, et c'est d'un si grave, ah, Frédéric est fou. Mais d'où vient maintenant cette grande tendresse que le sentiment surnaturel a trouvé m'apprécier devant ce calme solennel. De mon caprice l'inconnu devant mes cieux, sa voix mon oreille glisse de mon mystérieux. Non, non. Fantaisie, oh, dis-moi mensonge, tu reviens m'égarer encore, oh, retourne au pays d'un songe, oh, fantaisie, oh, c'est les doigts, oh, fantaisie, oh, c'est les doigts. Retourne au pays des songes et aux fantaisies, aux ailes d'or. Au bras poli de la païenne s'étend elle, tu s'enlacer. Elle tiendrait toute la mienne, la main qui sait lui peut passer. Le cercle d'or, je le suppose, a suivi ses passes des yeux d'un petit pied qui ne se pose que sur la mousse ou sur les fleurs. Et ces colliers encore parfumés de sa personne encore tout en embaumé, a pour sentir battre son cœur fidèle, tout essayant non bien aimé, tout c'est bien, oh non, de bien aimé. Non, non, fille chimère, la baisse éphémère qui trouble ma raison. Fantaisie, oh, dis-moi mensonge, tu reviens m'égarer encore, dans le tour au pays des songes, oh, fantaisie, oh, c'est les doigts, oh, fantaisie, oh, c'est les doigts. fantaisie, oh c'est l'étoile, oh fantaisie, oh fantaisie, oh c'est l'étoile.
That's actually one of my favorite arias, and I've always wanted to sing it. So, let's go to Jules Massenet, shall we? Massenet was one of the leading French composers of his generation in the late 19th century and early 20th century. He was known for his gift for melody, very refined orchestration, and his very deep sensitivity to character and emotion. He was a student at the Conservatoire, and he also won the Prix de Rome. You notice a pattern here? He composed a wide range of operas, songs, and orchestral works, blending classical formality with modern emotional depths. He composed a version of Cinderella that is absolutely beautiful, and we might be watching that one, Cendrillon. So I'm going to sing an aria from one of Massenet's masterpieces. Which is, of course, the opera Werther. Some of you have heard of this opera before, but it is based, of course, on the novel by Goethe, The Travails of the Poet Young Werther. And this is one of the opera's most iconic moments, the tenor aria Pourquoi me réveiller? Why do you awaken me? Sung by Werther in the third act. Here, Werther reads a passage from Ossian's poetry, which speaks of the inevitable fading beauty and the sorrow of parting from life. He gives voice to his anguish, lamenting the cruel awakening from the fleeting dream of happiness he once knew, because you see, he's in love with Charlotte, and she's in love with him, but unfortunately she has been betrothed to someone else, and there is no way to break off the engagement. This is one of Massenet's most moving and beautiful pieces. And difficult.
Tout mon corps me l'a. Pourquoi me réveiller au souffle du printemps? Pourquoi me réveiller sur mon front je sens peu caresse et pourtant bien proche le temps des orages et des tristesses. Pourquoi me réveiller au souffle du printemps? Demande les royaumes, viendra les voyageurs, se souvenant de ma gloire première, et ce ciel vainement cherchera ma splendeur. Il ne trouvera plus que deuil et que misère. Hélas, pourquoi me réveiller
So, now we're going to go on to another opera by Massenet, which is Manon. It was composed by Jules Massenet and it premiered at the Opéra Comique in Paris in 1884, and it is one of the most quintessential works in the French operatic tradition. It was based on the 18th century novel L'Histoire du Chevalier de Grieux et de Manon Lescaut by Abbé Prévost. The story of the Chevalier de Grieux and Manon Lescaut by Abbé Prévost. The opera tells us the story of Manon, which is a young woman who is torn between love and life of luxury, and her ill-fated romance with the Chevalier de Grieux. Massenet's Manon is a masterpiece of character study. Vivid, very emotionally nuanced, and musically vibrant. Unlike his darker Werther, Massenet captures the glittering charm and heartbreaking pathos of Parisian society in the 18th century, blending elegance, wit, and very deep sentiment. The opera was an enormous success from its debut and quickly became a staple of the repertoire, celebrated for its wealth of beautiful melodies, rich orchestration, and its portrayal of complex human emotions. One of the most tender moments of the opera is the aria En fermant les yeux, When I Close My Eyes, sung by de Grieux in Act 2. In this aria, the young Chevalier dreams aloud of peaceful, idyllic future with Manon, envisioning a life of pure love, far from the temptations and corruptions of the world. The music is serene and deeply lyrical, with a gentle flowing melody that mirrors the innocence of images reflected on a sparkling lake. Massenet writes the aria with a very soft, caressing orchestral accompaniment, allowing the tenor voice to float with effortlessly grace. En fermant les yeux stands as a delicate, bittersweet moment of calm before the storm of passion and tragedy that will inevitably ensue. So, let us allons-y, shall we?
Instant charmant où la crête fait trêve, où nous sommes deux seulement. Tiens, Manon, en marchant, je viens de faire un rêve. Hélas, en fermant les yeux, je vois là-bas une humble retraite, une maisonnette toute blanche au fond de bois. Sous cet anguille sombrage, l'éclair et joyeux ruisseau, où se mirent les La sera notre vie, si tu l'avais, oh, Manon.
Now we're going to move to Ambroise Thomas, who was one of the leading French composers of the 19th century. Celebrated for his operas and other musical works, he also won the prestigious Prix de Rome. Yes, I know. One of his most beloved... Oh, one thing you might like to know about this. In addition to his operatic contributions, Thomas also composed composed other several works, including one of the most famous Christmas carols that was ever composed, Minuit chrétien, O Holy Night, written in 1874. So,
Minuit chrétien, célèbre solennel.
that was by Ambroise Thomas. So this is the opera Mignon, based on Goethe's Wilhelm Meister's apprenticeship. Mignon tells the story of a young mysterious girl found by the traveling performer Wilhelm and taken under his protection. Her connection to a noble past becomes apparent, as it usually is during these things, right? One of the standout moments in Mignon is the aria Elle ne croyait pas, sung by Wilhelm in Act 2, where he reflects on Mignon's innocence and the powerful emotions that she has awakened within him. The music is very intimate and lyrical, with a flowing melodic line, and it's one of my favorite pieces. So let's sing Elle ne croyait pas, shall we?
La fleur épuisée, sa fraîcheur, son éclat, vers mer. Oh, bon temps, donnez-lui ta goutte de rosée. C'est en vain que j'attends mon ave de sa bouche. Je veux connaître enfin cieux, sa fraîcheur, son éclat.
And now, to end tonight's performance, probably the one you've been waiting for. So, Gaetano Donizetti was one of the most important composers of the Italian opera tradition, master of both the bel canto style and other operatic forms that flourished in the 19th century. However, one of his most famous operas is actually a French opera, La Fille du Régiment, The Daughter of the Regiment, which premiered in Paris in 1840. It's a very light-hearted, lively tale of romance and a military life, which follows the adventures of Marie, a young woman who was raised by the soldiers of the French army. You know how for some children it takes a village, where for her it takes an entire regiment. She falls in love with a young Tonio, who has to vie for her hand by convincing the regiment that he is worthy to be his her groom. And so he manages it. So now, without further ado, the most famous aria from La Fille du Régiment, which has 9 high Cs, so let's see if I can blast through them. A mes amis.
Mes amis, quel jour de fête, je vais marcher sur votre avant. À mes amis, quel jour de fête, je vais marcher sur votre avant. L'amour qui m'a tourné ma tête, désormais, m'ira l'année. À mes amis, je vais marcher sur votre drapeau, je vais marcher sur votre drapeau. Oui, celle pour qui j'aspire, à mes vœux, à dernier sourire, et c'est doux espoir de bonheur couvre ma maison et mon cœur. Ah, mes amis, quel jour de fête! Je vais marcher sous vos drapeaux, à mes amis, quel jour de fête. Je vais marcher sous vos drapeaux, je vais marcher sous vos drapeaux, je vais marcher. À mes amis, je vais marcher sous vos drapeaux. Mais voici, militaire maï.
Sorry, I usually have to sit way back for this one. Otherwise, I kill the microphone. I decided to throw in a high D in there because, sure, why not? Well, thank you so much for coming in tonight. I will be repeating this concert next Saturday because I like it so much, as well as Bespoke.